Matthew Disher here, host of the American Guns Podcast, reminding you that the show that you are listening to is part of a network of shows. All pro-freedom content, all great stuff. So check us out at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the only man to shoot the same non-threat 4 times at Nationals, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. You've heard me and some of the guests on the show talk about the benefits of dry fire. It's the easiest, most inexpensive way to get better as a shooter. But it's got some drawbacks. One of those being that because you don't actually see where your shots are hitting, you're just pointing at a target, you don't know if you're repeatedly practicing bad technique. So one thing you can do is use a laser bullet. But if you use a laser bullet by itself, you can be tempted to peek at your target to watch the little red dot show up. But now you can use the iTarget Pro system. It gives you instant feedback and lets you see exactly where you're hitting. Just place your phone in this iTarget sled, point the camera at the target. The app then monitors your target for hits from the laser bullet and maps them on the screen, showing you exactly where you shot. It's really cool. Just watch your sights like you normally would. Let the app do the rest. iTarget Pro is available for Android and Apple phones. Laser bullets are available in all of the popular pistol calibers, 9mm, 45, 40 Smith & Wesson, 38 Special. iTarget Pro offers you a safe and effective dry fire training tool that will make your training fun again. Check it out at itargetpro.com. Well, today I'm excited to introduce you to another of the sport's up-and-coming junior shooters. Lian Dunlevy from Westover, West Virginia is our guest. Lian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You just turned 18 this January, right?
Yeah, last Sunday.
So you are officially no longer a junior, is that correct?
Yeah, no longer. Missed the good old days already.
Yep. And you're still in high school. You're finishing up your senior year.
Yep.
So how long have you been shooting?
I've been shooting for about 2.5 years now.
Oh, wow. So
yeah. Started around 15.
I'm gonna guess it was your dad that introduced you.
Yeah, it was. We had been shooting here and there around an indoor range, just trying to get the fundamentals down. And then he started going to a local IDPA match every month. And then after he was in it for about a season, he started bringing me out and introducing me to it.
What was the first gun that you started shooting? What did your dad introduce you to?
Initially, I was shooting a Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm.
That was your first?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of all the kids who are starting out at like 6 and 4 and like 9mm. Well, you were 15.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was 15. A little bit at the beginning. We there's steel matches at that same range, so to kind of get used to that competition environment. Whenever I was first starting out before any IDPA matches, we had a little bit of 22 going on there. But yeah.
What are you involved in other shooting sports actively in addition to IDPA?
Oh, a little bit of USPSA involvement too, mainly IDPA. But yeah, my little brother shoots a lot of shotguns, so I do some of that for fun on the side, but no extreme competitive.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you remember that first local match that your dad took you to?
Yeah, I remember all the whole starting out thing, just being very scared of getting DQ'd. That was always the biggest thing. Being that junior, trying to make sure I could prove that I was going to be safe with the gun. And, everyone kind of looks at you like, oh, got to make sure that this kid's going to be safe. You're only like 15 running around with a live 9mm. So That was the biggest thing with safety starting out.
What do you remember about the match itself, other than being scared of DQing yourself?
Well, one of the things was it had moving targets. So I mean, there's like the swingers that come around and the things that come towards you and then flip away. I
I s-
remember that being like so awesome, going from the still targets to the targets that were moving around.
Yep, that's a big
That
change.
was a big deal.
So how long after that did you decide that you wanted to get really good at IDPA? Did it stay just kind of a hobby for a while, or did you how when did you get serious?
Yeah, so I'd say I got serious when we went to our first tiered event, which was the West Virginia States event down in it was in Peacemaker whenever they first had it, and kind of getting to go in that real competitive environment, going from the local to the tiered event, and having that first experience. And there was other junior shooters there, which I'd never been exposed to, and I got to see sponsored shooter jerseys, which I'd never seen before. So that was kind of like once I got in that environment, I was like, oh, I got to start trying to win these ones, and I got to get better for these kind of competitions.
So how did you do at that first sanction match? What did you think?
Oh, I did pretty bad. Honestly, it was like I said, that was the going from the first local to the first tier. I still had that anxiety starting out with it, and I was just like, my whole goal was not to get DQ'd because that first event they had airplanes and everything there. They had this whole airplane cockpit that you had to
Oh wow.
sit in, and it was really neat. It was cool to get that kind of exposure, but at the same time, I was like, my main goal was just not making any mistakes and just staying safe.
So what did you do once you got the bug from that first sanction match? How
hmm
did that change your approach to the sport? What did you do to try to get better? Because you've gotten a lot better in a very short period of time.
Thank you. Yeah, a big thing is, of course, just training with my dad. I mean, doing a lot of work, getting to go to those events and see how other people are shooting. And my dad has always been very perceptive of that kind of stuff, and was always a very good teacher of a lot of the things that he learned. So, I mean, seeing those events every time we went to an event, just tried to learn from it, talk about things that we might have messed up on, things that are going to be improved for the next competition we go to, and then making sure that those specific things are worked on when we hit the range. Try
Very
to use our
good.
rounds wisely.
Do you do a lot of dry fire? Do you have where you live? Do you have the opportunity to shoot live fire a lot, or are you limited
Yeah.
to going to a public range?
No, so we aren't really limited by the live fire. We live kind of in the middle of a neighborhood, so nothing around our house. But
Hmm.
MDRC, a local range, has nice outdoor bays, which is really nice. And then there's a new indoor range by us, Defense in Depth, that's really nice. And they have little events every week, and we train there sometimes too in the lanes, which is nice. You're allowed to draw and double tap, which you can't do at some indoor ranges. So that's kind of nice. But then with dry firing, we have the cardboard targets put up in the house. Like in our living room, there's the little 1/3 cutouts. So we'll be watching TV and just hear the beep beep, and mom's like, "Stop that beeping!"
I started to say, I'm sure mom loves that.
Yeah, mom and the dog both love the beep. But then also I'll like sit on the kitchen table doing homework and have my IDPA rig on. Once I get bored with homework, stand up, do a couple dry fire draws, and sit back down. Try to balance it all out.
So you started out with the Smith and Wesson M&P. What are you competing with now?
Yeah. Now I'm using a Glock 34. I'm on the
Gotcha.
bandwagon. I
Right.
went through a short phase of shooting Arsenal Strike One. My dad was
Really?
like super into that gun, and I was like always skeptical. I was like, I don't want to be into the same gun dad is.
Right, of
So
course.
I shot it for a little bit, and then I all came back to the Glock.
Well, and you started just a couple of years ago, and last year you became one of IDPA's youngest masters in SSP, right?
Yeah, I was so excited about that.
Tell us how that happened. That wasn't a classifier bump. That was at a match. Tell us about that event.
Yeah. So what really happened at that event was the season before. This is really what kind of impacted it is I was going too fast.
Mm.
I'd like had some matches with some masters and just saw people blazing it in that it's really hard to control your speed, being like, especially that slight level of immaturity I had shooting in the past. Of course, it's like you want to go so fast, and it's a lot more fun to try to do that, but it's not a lot more points, which is the problem.
Right.
So I was kind of in that habit, in that mindset of going too fast, and then there was a tiered event, the Potomac Grail in Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
and I made a dedicated effort to just slow down. Like I said, I don't care about my rank. Like it doesn't matter what I get. I'm just gonna prove to myself and my mind that I'm able to slow down and get my hits. So I performed way worse than I normally did at that event just because I didn't have my speed.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually improved. So when I got to the next match where I actually got my match bump, I was able to use the skills that I learned from slowing down and just had more consistent stages than I'd ever had before and was able to bring my speed back with it.
So you found what Steve Anderson calls match mode. You
Yeah, match mode, exactly. I was hitting
exactly.
speed mode way too often.
That's not just a function of your immaturity as a teenager. That everybody does that. You get shooting with really fast shooters, and it's easy to say, "Ooh, I want to go that fast too."
Yeah, it's a good one. But that's what really happened at that match. I just kind of got into that match mode and stayed consistent throughout the day and just ended up in a good spot.
Did you feel like at the end of it that you were going to get that you had won, that you were going to get the bump, or
But
how did you feel coming out of it before they announced the awards?
before the ranks came out, I knew that it was a super solid match. It was the most solid that I'd ever felt after a match. I kind of was able to gauge where the rest of my squad was and compare myself to my dad, of course, and kind of see how everything was going there. And I just at that point, before the scores came out, I was like, no matter where I am, I shot a super solid match. Like it was a great match to finish the season on, and I knew that there was a potential to kind of get that master score. And then it came out, and I ended up getting second overall in the division. So I was like, that was just great to know that the lessons that I'd implemented actually really paid off on paper.
Very cool. Tell us about your dad. I get the sense that you guys have a little bit of a competitive rivalry going. Do you?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good relationship. I mean, the whole shooting kind of started to just have that thing to do with my dad. A lot of it. I mean, my dad, he runs a local gym. Always worked out as a bodybuilder when I was little, and I kind of am the robotics nerd and take a whole bunch of different science classes. So it's a little bit different interests, but shooting kind of got that same interest together. So I mean, we every event we pretty much went to together, and it was always kind of getting that reputation in the area. People are always like, "Oh, it's the Dunlevys, it's a dad and son." And every time people come over to me, "You gonna beat your dad today? You gonna beat your dad today? Your old man going down?" So it was always like everyone around that knew us was just waiting for me to beat him, and I would always talk about that. So any match that I got him in, there was like one match I beat him by like 1 second at like a tier 2 or tier 3, and everyone's like, "Oh, you beat your dad! Oh my god!" So it's good. He's always proud when I beat him, and he always telling me, he's like, "Lian, I'm upset that you're not right behind me." He's like, "I don't want you to beat me yet, but you should at least be like one place behind me." I was like, "I'm working on it." So it's always there.
Well, what was the most important thing that you learned? Was it the finding that match mode? Was that the most important thing that helped you improve your shooting, or was there something else that contributed to that jump from the kid scared of DQing at the match to making master?
The first thing was just, of course, getting comfortable and being able to have those kind of once the draw and the reload are starting to become more muscle memory and you're able to really just control the gun. That's like not really a lesson, but just something that comes with time. That was nice.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest lesson is probably just understanding true focus. So the focus on the front sight, the smooth trigger pull, like it's really what I learned, and it was just hilarious, is like the base lessons. Like the thing that you learn the first time you pick up a gun is the thing that brings you to master. It's just the front sight focus, trigger pull. It's like the exact same lessons, just getting a better understanding of them.
All right. Do you play other sports?
Not really. I mean, shooting that practical pistol shooting is like the only thing.
Very cool.
which
But
is
you're
yeah.
involved in some other activities at school. You mentioned robotics earlier. You're involved in some
Yeah.
robotics competitions. Tell us a little about that.
So I'm the president of our robotics club in the area, Mountaineer Area Robotics. It's a 40 student team. It's in a robotics called FRC. Don't need to go into that a whole lot, but it's a pretty big robotics organization. And my team got a Hall of Fame a few years ago, which is pretty
Nice.
cool. 2 years ago, we were Hall of Fame and made it to Worlds last year, and we're finalists on our division at Worlds. So stay pretty busy. Right now, we're in the build season of robotics, so we're building a robot for this year. We get 6 weeks to build a robot every year with a new game.
Cool.
So that's what we're working on now.
And you did an internship with NASA too, right?
Yeah, the last 2 summers, I've been lucky to get an internship at a NASA facility in the area, which has
Very
been
cool.
really fun and
Tell
cool.
us about that.
So, 2 years ago, I got an internship. I was the youngest high school intern at the NASA facility that I was working at, and that year I was working on the NASA facility had this satellite outreach program for the college for college students,
Hmm.
and in the kit that they provided, they had sensors that would read the x and the y axis of the little satellites that the
Hmm.
college students would launch in orbit. They didn't have a way to monitor the z axis, so it was my job to get this little array of solar panels that they had and test them for voltage output at like various degrees to a light source so
Hmm.
they could actually use the light in the solar panels to determine that axis in space. So it's kind of like designing and running a test on a whole bunch of solar panels. And then I worked with a little team and we had got to do a launch at the end of it and everything. And then last summer was more solar panel stuff, but a little different. It was like green and energy efficiency and all that fun stuff. But it's cool. It's like a
Very.
job, 40 hours a week, 8 weeks of the summer.
Oh wow.
So my summers, it's NASA during the week and shooting during the weekends.
Well, I was going to say,
So.
how with all the activities you said you stay really busy, how do you balance schoolwork and the robotics and the internships and shooting? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, it's a process. You gotta set your priorities, and
Hmm.
that's the biggest thing. Is it's like take it one day at a time and determine what's most important to you. So
Hmm.
it's like over the summer, I mean, NASA would be from like 8 to 5, kind of part of the day, and then days that I could, I'd go to the range with my dad, work on some skills. Like every weekend, luckily in our area with being so close to Western Pennsylvania, like there's always a practical shooting sport match to go to. So it was like every weekend, kind of the weekend would be the time for shooting, the week would be the time for NASA, and kind of compartmentalize that. And during the school year, it's just trying to make sure that I have take a little bit more time on my schoolwork during the week so I
Hmm.
can have as free weekends as possible. So during like robotics build season, I can be in robotics because I'm in robotics like 40 hours a week
Oh,
when it's robotics build season. And then if it's like shooting season, then I just make sure I can get all my homework done Friday night, Monday night, so that I can have that weekend free for shooting.
with dry fire draws in between.
Yeah, yeah, and in range time when you can.
So, what do your friends think about your hobby? Do they ask you about it? Do you talk to them about it? What do they think about your being a junior master in IDPA?
It's kind of funny. Sometimes they'll be all hyped over that. Like, in class, I got sponsored by Rudy Project Shooting Teams last year, and like around the summertime. So that was like my first sponsorship, and I told my friends like, guys, I'm a sponsored shooter. Like, what does that even mean? But we go to class, and they'll be like, one of my friends would tell the teacher, my chemistry teacher, he was like, "Hey, chemistry teacher, did you hear that? Did you know that you have a sponsored athlete in your class?" Because they always argue like shooting's not a sport. So that was one thing. That's how it kind of
Oh,
started out. And then they started asking for merchandise. They're like, "Hey, Lian, since you're sponsored, can I get some like Lian Dunlevy shooting merchandise?" I was like, "That's not how it works."
do you ever catch any flack from anybody about being involved with guns?
No, that's one thing I kind of, especially with all the climate, I was really watching out for because I've seen kids even in my area. It's kind of sad because it's usually the kids that kind of are socially so out of touch they end up like posting something with a Nerf gun or a BB gun, be like, "Don't come to school tomorrow," and you're like, "Oh no, that was a dumb idea," and they
Ugh.
end up getting like suspended or expelled, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, one time I was at home, I'd cleaned my Glock before a competition. It was all laid out, and I was like, "That is a nice looking piece of like machinery right there." It was beautiful. I was like, "I gotta take a picture of this and like show it to my friends." Like, "Oh my God, no,
Oh.
stop!" Like I was like, "You can't do that." So I'm always kind of wary about that,
Yeah,
of course. But
unfortunately.
then, yeah, it's like something you just gotta watch out for nowadays. But then last year, um, after all the seniors left and all the classes, I mean, after like once you get to the end of the year, everything starts slowing down in school. So you have like those end of the year projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I had in physics they wanted you to do the physics of some sport, and then in English they wanted you to do a talent show. So I was like, you know what? I work with guns so much. Like I'm just gonna try to be politically correct about it and just talk about it a little bit. So I like took the risk, I showed some shooting videos in my English class, and everyone was just impressed, and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool." And then in my physics class, I actually heard the teacher after, because I was talking about the physics of guns and yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
My teacher had gone to talk to the other teachers after seeing the shooting videos, because no one's like exposed to practical pistol like sports most of
Right.
the time. They see one of their students running around with a gun shooting all these silhouettes quickly, and they're like, "What? This kid's like a super spy or something." It's different. So it was actually kind of nice because I heard that one of the teachers said after, whenever they went and talked to them, I was like, "You were talking to other teachers about me shooting?" They were like, "That kid needs to be given a gun and protect our school. Like we need him protecting our school." So I was like, that was a good response rather than something else. Like so that was good. Usually it's received well.
Well, good. That could go completely the wrong way.
Yeah, it's a risky move, but I think luckily too, it's like I try to be the kind of student that's not going to seem like a risk
Right.
factor in that area. So yeah, it typically ends out well.
Congratulations to you on that, and proud of you for because one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast was to give people sort of the other side of the gun culture where we see so many negative images. I wanted
Yeah,
to let people hear and get to know people who are just everyday kids in high school, and
yeah,
your doctors and your airline pilots and your police officers who go out there every day, and they're normal people, and then on the weekend they have fun with guns, and they're
yeah, exactly.
completely normal.
Yeah, it's really cool. No one expects it when they meet me to shoot guns either. Like, what? That's crazy. That's kind of cool.
The the robotics nerd is a superstar.
Yeah, exactly. They're never quite sure what to think about it because they like don't know the level of like master. What is it? But yeah, it's always fun. But one thing that's cool, even like you bringing it up in class discussions, because the teachers always be like they want to have class discussions, and with all the school shooting discussion that was happening in the last year especially, they'd be like talking about it. It's like, well, guys, I'm a sponsored shooter, and they're like, what? That's crazy. What does that even mean? I was like, yeah, I mean, there's a large group of people that competitively shoot guns. They're super safe with them, like, and blah da 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 da, and kind of try to bring that other perspective into it. And usually, like they're really they seem to be perceptive most of the time, and
Good.
it's interesting. I'm always happy to give that other perspective to people that I can.
Getting back to your shooting, what kind of stages do you like to shoot? Do you like really technical stages where you have to kind of think them through? Do you like really tricky shots? Do you like lots of movement or movers? Do you like stages where you have to do a lot of moving?
Yeah.
What kind of a stage really excites you?
My favorite stages are ones where there is planning and there's a good bit of movement.
Mm.
I'm a big fan of those. I'm always there was this one match I went to and we ended up having like two it was a USPSA match and we had like two grandmasters in our squad, which
Mhm.
was just like insane to actually get to shoot with those guys, and just the way that they thought about a stage was crazy. Like it was hearing about stage planning from those guys was a completely different understanding. And after that, I kind of was learned about this whole new part of practical pistol shooting with in IDPA and USPSA with the movement. And I never quite
Mm.
understood the intensity of that. My dad took a class with a Kita Bus, so
Mhm.
he came back and talked to me about moving a little bit too. But learning about that made stage planning so much more fun and interesting. Like so
Mhm.
movement and stages where there was a lot of different transitions and a wider stage like a field stage, those kind of are the kind of stages I like. My dad likes the stages where you stand in place and shoot all the targets really fast, and he kills those, and it's so beautiful. But I'm like, the more movement I have, if I can start sprinting, like I would tell my dad because I forget someone called me a squirrel. I was zooming around like a squirrel or something. So like I like going into squirrel mode. I just look at my dad and like, Dad, this is squirrel mode stage right here. This is Vogel mode. I call it Vogel mode sometimes. But I like those just the running gun stages where you have to plan your movement out.
So you were just invited to join the Gunner X shooting team, right?
Yeah,
Tell us about
Gunner
that.
X.
Tell us about the team and how that came about.
So Gunner X is actually a team that my dad and Leif Kunkel, the guy that just got into practical pistol shooting, we've known for a while, are trying to start up, and it's pretty cool. They're going to be all masters and A shooters, trying to get just a really elite group of shooters that are all coming from good backgrounds and just get a new shooting team up and running. We have some sponsors, Lock Grips and Pro Performance. There's like workouts that we're sending out that are shooting based because my dad has that fitness background. So we're
Mhm.
coming out with like shooting based workouts and Hunter's HD Gold glasses, all kinds of different people. And we're trying to kind of grow and have that Gunner X brand. And then depending on where I go to college, I'd be excited to kind of stay involved with that. And it's something that my dad's just kind of working on taking from there.
Cool. So what is next for you? What are you thinking about? Have you started thinking about college? I know your mom and dad have, but have you started thinking
Well,
about it?
yeah, no. So the college season, like application season's kind of wrapping up, so now it's scholarships and kind of waiting to see what happens. I applied to the Naval Academy. I got all the stuff in for the Naval Academy, so I'm considering that for sure, depending on if I get in, going into some kind of systems engineering or nuclear engineering with them. And then if I don't get into the Naval Academy, I applied to some other schools. I applied to like MIT and Stanford for fun, just because you got to throw your hat in the ring there. And then Georgia Tech to see what happens. And then I'm already in at WVU, a local college.
Right.
So so I kind of, if I don't get in the Naval Academy, I'll probably go chemical engineering or petroleum in one of those places.
Very good. So as we kind of wrap things up here, what is it about you've dedicated a ton of time and
Hmm.
to this sport? What is it about IDPA that I mean, you're good enough shooter that you could choose any sport you wanted to. Why is IDPA the one you like so much? What is it you love about it?
What I love about IDPA is how the sport really teaches you something that you can take outside of it. Like a lot of different sports are only useful for the sport you're playing. Like you're just learning that skill to get better
Mm.
at that sport. IDPA, you're shooting it, you're learning how to focus better, you're learning how to become more efficient, and of course, the obvious one, you're learning how to use a firearm more efficiently and become a true master at using that tool, which is just really cool to be able to do that with a fun competitive environment.
Well, Lian, thank you so much for coming on the show. Congratulations on making master, and good luck with whatever the future holds. Probably distinguished master at some point, and on to MIT or the Naval Academy. I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing what you do next.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you for having me.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.